Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Day After podcast.
Wait!
Oh, we're waiting. This is an abrupt wait. What are we waiting for?
I forgot. How could I forget? Maybe because my entire my past month was Christmas themed. It's December 1st.
Look at that.
Yeah.
R2D2 ugly sweater.
Oh yeah. I saw it at GameStop one year and I'm like, I need an ugly sweater, and this is a rather good one. So yeah.
Nice, nice. I have a Bob Ross ugly sweater, but I don't know where that is. So,
That's cool. That's really cool.
yeah.
Um Yeah, well, it's December 1st. Happy holiday season, guys. Or, well, we can officially say, I know there's people that's like, no, the season doesn't start in November. We're all past that now. We're in December, so those people can celebrate and we can all have a merry holiday.
See, I always look at it as like Thanksgiving is the start of the holiday season, even if you don't
Yeah,
consider like doing all the Christmas stuff necessarily, but like
yeah,
that's when like the season like begins. It's like they're filling you up so that way
yeah.
you can have the energy to get through the holidays.
I thought it was so you could, get a little bit of chunk on you so you can endure the cold.
It's a mixture of both.
Dual purpose.
Yeah.
But yeah, so last night's episode, I gotta say, this one was really amazing. I enjoyed seeing the challenge come back, and Jeff was even excited too. It was like, yeah, this is where we put you through some pain and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. He kept bringing up also about how back in the day
Yeah.
they used to inflict a little more punishment and when he was also going through that about like past things we got the Survivor theme song that kind of came
Okay.
into there as well. That whole section really felt like Survivor had listened to the fans, and Jeff was really letting us know he listened to us. Because I think in 41 and
Yeah.
42, the biggest complaints that people had was it felt like they got rid of all the old school elements of the game. And I think that this was something that they were like, hey, here we go. We still have it. We can still do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that because there are some like older things that we haven't seen in a while, and this was definitely one of them. It turned out to be, make Survivor history this season because for the first time ever, they outlasted the challenge
Yeah, which is
and was like,
crazy.
yeah, I mean, they outlasted a tide, and it was like I wasn't aware that was something that could happen. I thought like
Yeah.
high tide was like sometime at night. Shows you how much I pay attention in science class. But like I thought it was just gonna go up and up and up and up until they were just like submerged completely. And
Mhm.
then it's whomever wants to drop out first.
Yeah, Sam. I thought we were going to get just like a okay at the tide that is going to be there for now, like a minute. Someone's just going to definitely not just be okay with being down there for a full minute, but they just kept going. Of in Modern Survivor 2, we have not really had too many super long endurance kind of competitions. Like, we did have the Gabler Cody one that happened earlier this season, but even
Yeah.
that didn't even go to an hour. That went to like 50 minutes or something like that.
Still
Um,
broke the record, but
yeah, it's yeah, exactly. It did good. But yeah, it's a little different here though with this one. Like of all the challenges for endurance that to go super long, I would not have guessed to be this one.
no, because it on paper, the way to get through it is just remember they're not going to let you die on national TV,
Yeah,
international technically, since it plays in other countries. But, you know, it's totally different when you're under there and
yeah.
fear takes over. I'm not saying this is an easy challenge by any means, but this is one where it takes a lot of willpower and psyching yourself up. I mean, I got to give props to Cody because like he was fighting to stay in. He was like, "No,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go." He was like taking a minute to like collect himself and then push through and get back into the challenge.
Yeah, all four of the final people, I think, like Cassie was beating herself up for not finishing, like getting through, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like
I
that
think
is,
I think part of the reason, and I totally understand that, I understand this was because she gave up when the other two both got like immunity just for sticking it out,
Mhm.
and because she went so far to not end up with anything, I can understand why that's pretty
Yeah,
crushing.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, well, I feel like this is also the kind of challenge that if you do go like 2 hours, if it's going to be really hard to properly strategize that day for the vote out and everything, because you heard them, they are freezing. That is the kind of challenge that can really like mentally kind of like check you out for the
yeah,
day. So it's a doozy.
it's draining.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, it's a draining challenge, and no pun intended. But yeah, that's always been like a favorite of mine to see, mostly because I love horror movies and stuff, and this is like a torture thing, and I'm like, ooh, yeah, that's interesting. Plus, it's kind of like unique in the sense where it's an endurance challenge that's very, very mental. And like, it's something that involves the nature, the island itself. I think it's a really cool thing because it combines all these elements
Mhm.
to make it very survivor-esque where you have these things that are happening. It's like nature versus man, and man versus mind basically. um
Mhm.
and then man versus man because you're going against everyone else. So yeah, great challenge. I don't think it's going to come back after this.
Yeah, it seems like they were like, okay, we got like the this is the last iteration to have like something new that you can really do with this challenge. Like for now,
Yeah.
it's like, if they bring it back, you're not going to get anything crazy new anymore. It's like, okay,
No.
we've seen it now. They did a bunch of Old School Survivor, and now they've gotten to the point where they've made it all the way through. I think you're good with the challenge.
I think with because of that, it's like I don't even think they would have. The only other way I would see them bring it back was for 44, but I think because of how it played out, I don't even think they would
Yeah.
bring it for 44. Because now going in there, it's like, okay, I'm just gonna stall out to the end, but then they would know that.
Hmm.
I mean, not it's not as simple as just stalling out to the end and just like holding your ground to the end. What those two did was like a really big accomplishment because like
Yeah.
in over 20 years, no one's ever done that. I forget which season that specific challenge premiered in.
Hmm.
If you know, um,
I am not. It had to have been somewhere in the teens, I imagine, right?
yeah, I imagine the teens too. But yeah, so like, yeah, it's just like that's one of the interesting things about like New School and this whole thing of like the further you get along about something, like new, like I don't want to say strategies, but like records that were held like long ago and
Hmm.
stuff, the newer generations, even though some of them are the same age as some of the contestants that done this,
Yeah.
kind of have a leg up in a lot of regards. They're playing a lot harder
Hmm.
than they were back in the day.
Yeah. I'm not sure, so don't quote me exactly on this, but it may be Micronesia.
That
It
makes
may
sense.
it could potentially be Micronesia to Caramoan, like the two different fans versus favorites for the
I know they played it in Caramoan because Brenda won that one, and I was
yeah.
like,
And then that was the
yeah,
last time I believe. So yeah, I think there's a very good chance of it being Micronesia to Caramoan.
yeah. Yeah, that seems right for me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Also, one thing we got to talk about this challenge was the whole thing in the beginning. The boat
Yeah.
comes, and then people trying to find this advantage for this challenge where you can place your bet on a place your or pick your champion. Like that search, there were so many things where I was, how did you not see that?
Yeah, it became comical. It was like Russell Hantz is like freaking out, I bet,
Turning in
because
his grave.
he complains all the time for people being terrible at finding these advantages nowadays because they are easier than when they first were putting idols somewhere in the jungle. It's like they are very much easier.
Think because nowadays, and they even mentioned this in the little intro when everyone just started running to find the advantage. Finding advantage puts a target on your back. So like now I think they make it a little bit more obvious so you have more of a chance of stumbling upon it as
Yeah.
opposed to like, it just never being found in a way to, make sure people find this stuff because um let's even take the whole beware stuff where it took the passwords to activate it. If someone just didn't find it on let's say no one found it on the Blue Tribe in 41. Nasir just never found it, or no one did. Those two idols basically just been null and void the entire season, or
Mhm.
stuff like that. Um, so I think they kind of have to make it a little bit more obvious. But now that people were looking for this advantage specifically, they obviously had to put that little teal strip on there, but
Mhm.
it was very well like I can see how the coloring and for someone that's frantically looking, because if you're
Yeah.
frantically looking, you're gonna miss out on like key details.
Yeah, it was just like it every time that someone could have looked around to see it, they like always like looked their head in some weird way that just never was working until finally like it was we probably got like 7 or 8 different times of people not like being right there and not finding it until
Dude,
Cody.
no, Gabriel was like looking at it. It was
Yeah.
just like right in front of him, and I'm like, How?" Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I it was crazy. And when they started doing the confessionals, I started being like, okay, everyone who's now currently getting a confessional is not finding this because it was like Sammy was talking about having trouble. We got Cassidy, Gabler, like they were all just like Owen, like all four of them were just like having these confessionals, and I was just like, okay, who's getting this now? Are we getting we're down to the three big players who have yet to be revealed for this. Which one of them is getting it? And
yeah,
it's Cody. He's
it's Cody.
another he finds another advantage for himself.
Yeah, the man is. I'd say. I mean, I'm looking at the six that are left after this episode, and one thing I do have to mention, that is related to this was Owen. Gabler went to Owen and stuff saying that, oh, I was about to tell you, but they flipped last minute. Them being Cody and Jesse, and then Owen's like, Owen is like listening. It's like, yeah, I've never been on the right side of the votes this entire game, like except for the very first vote.
Yeah.
And then like, Gabler's like, yeah, but I think I know a way to get us to final three. He's like, I don't care. I'm not gonna win. And so like I've been in those moments more than I'd like to admit where I'm just like, there's just no way, there's just no way. And it's just like all that self-doubt and stuff. And
uh,
so I, it's something where um, people going to the end of this game where you look at everyone and it does, there's a reason why we call them the big three. It's because it's one of those three. It's
yeah.
either Cody, Jesse, or Carla. Unless it's like I don't even one of them's getting it to the end.
Yeah.
At least one of them is.
It's very hard to see the world where Jesse, Cody, and Carla go out back to back to back right now.
Yeah. Um, just especially since one of the, each one of them has an idol, so they're guaranteed to get to like five.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're getting to the point where there's only two opportunities to play it left.
Yeah.
Next episode and final five.
Yeah.
And so like Cody's like win equity keeps going up because he keeps finding these advantages. He keeps doing pretty well in challenges too.
Hmm.
I feel like he is going to be targeted soon because
Yeah.
like he is someone where he's kind of proven, like a lot of people have been comparing him and Jesse to Dom and Wendell in
Hmm.
some regards, where they're just like a duo that's really, really powerful that no one can really target. They've
Hmm.
had opportunities. And it's just like, no, it's just like no one's really going after them that much. And, they're kind of like a power duo, like a pretty not up until
Hmm.
this point. Next episode, it looks like some things maybe a little different because everyone's name was mentioned in that trailer. It was
Hmm.
like all except Jeff. It's like maybe we
Yeah.
should go to Jeff Probst.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, well,
so like
you brought up
yeah,
a really interesting point though, that it has been the top people have kind of just been in control this whole game, and I think that the reason is, and Sammy touched on it in Tribal Council, was about there's this whole thing about the Carla and the whole like premise for the season is like to trust your people, like trust your
yeah,
allies. That is so great when you're on top. Like that is only good when you're on top. So when you're on top, you want to tell everyone, hey, trust your allies. Don't not listen to us. Like we got you. If you want to make it further this game, you gotta trust your allies. You gotta vote the way that we're telling you. Because
yeah,
that is typical, how you control from the top. Um, and so of course Sammy's going to be upset because he just got moved from where he was the top when that was totally fine to be thinking that, to now be on the bottom where it's like, wait a second, why would I think that?
yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's like I understand, and I've even said in the past, playing from the middle strategically is a sound way to go
Mhm.
because usually you see a lot of situations where the people in the middle end up winning this game. I'd say a prime example of that was Natalie Anderson,
Mhm.
where she kind of was in that middle of like some alliances and then took charge and like, no. And then when people realized, they were like, oh crap, kind of too late.
Mhm.
But, I feel like because Modern Survivor was a bit more self-aware than I think it's ever been, it's kind of like, like they're kind of being like, okay, so Sammy is playing from the middle. And since that's a very obvious thing, then it's like, okay, so we can't really trust Sammy moving forward.
Mhm.
Which is kind of funny because he wasn't the initial target after the challenge. He
Yeah.
was like, all right, we're gonna split votes, Cass and Sammy. And I think we were starting to see a bit more of Carla's bloodthirstiness that we
Mhm.
saw in the trailer, where it's like, all right, she's gonna take out her own number one.
Mhm.
What do you think about that strategy?
Um, well, I think it would have doomed Carla. I think she would have. I think if I'll just bring up, we did some boot lists that we put up onto our community poll. Um,
Yeah,
and I really do think because I had Cassie going out 7, and then I had Carla going out at 5. I think that's what could very well could have happened in that kind of thing where she ends up losing her person, realizes, wait a second, I'm now in a terrible position, plays Rydell at 6, and then goes home at 5.
yeah.
And I think it would have just given Jesse and Cody free reign to make it to the end.
Oh,
Where,
definitely.
or to be honest, you brought up the comparison to them being Dom and Wendell. I look at them more as JT and Steven,
I
except
get that too.
this time I think Steven, which is Jesse in this situation, is more likely to win actually if they get to the
Yeah.
end. Whereas,
He's number one in my opinion, especially after this episode.
Yeah.
to win this.
Yeah, even though he only had one confessional this episode, Jesse, it was still a very important confessional where they basically just framed him in being in just a great position in the game.
He is, because Cody is clearly the bigger target. For multiple, like, also, we gotta talk about Jesse in a sense. He is the only one that hasn't won an individual immunity challenge.
Yeah.
Everyone else, and this was even a point to keep Sammy, where it was like, oh, he's always the first one out in challenges. The same thing that we can see with Jesse is like, I don't know if he's throwing or he's giving it his all and just not performing on that end.
Yeah,
Even if he's not performing well on that end, he is still playing a great game. But I feel like his threat level to the other players is very, very low in compared to Cody because he hasn't shown his strength and challenges, if he
yeah.
has it.
Yeah, well, his strength and challenges, and we know this from the pre-merge, is puzzles. He is a puzzle guy, and we haven't had a puzzle immunity challenge yet. But typically, we start getting a lot more of the obstacle puzzle challenges happens around final six
Yeah,
area. So we are entering the zone where he might pull out an immunity win,
excel.
because
Yeah.
even though he might be terrible at like the obstacle course area of it, he might have that kind of like make it to the puzzle entirely, just be boom boom boom, and then there you go.
Well, I mean, the thing about the thing about the obstacle slash puzzle things,
Mhm.
if you look at it from a gameplay method, the obstacle is clearly to see how much time you have to solve the puzzle compared to everyone else. It's
Mhm.
like if you finish it earlier than everyone else, you have extra time to solve the puzzle. Because the main objective, the win condition for that is to solve the puzzle. So, like, the
Mhm.
more time you have an advantage on the puzzle. Um, so I feel, I don't know. I can definitely see Jesse, I don't want to say holding back, but maybe, not giving it his all in some of these challenges.
Mhm.
I'll be honest, I thought he was going to win this challenge prior to everything. I was like looking at everyone, I'm like, I'd probably choose Jesse.
Interesting.
I clearly I was wrong.
Yeah.
But part of me was also like, he's a tough guy. This is like endurance and psychological. So I feel like this would have been up Jesse's alley. Also, I think it's more so to like cover. I'd say in an ideal world, you're covering you and your number one. Because
Uh-huh.
like if he wins immunity and I win immunity, both of us are safe. Because
Mhm.
there was a point when they were talking between Sammy and Cass where it was like, are they going to like flip it onto Jesse? Because that would be like the smart move,
Mhm.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he would have seen it coming.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that that just letting Jesse and Cody get by without having to really worry so far is just it's not good. Like even if you now try to make a target on them, they're at six. Like they could still just play an idle. Cody wins an immunity at five. Jesse finds a final five advantage or something, and suddenly
Yeah,
he is safe or something at five. There's so many things now that could just happen to keep them in the game. That it's
much.
just
Yeah,
yeah, which is just yeah, it's scary. I said Cody, you're gonna want to probably take Cody out around like seven, because he's gonna just be good in challenges. Like he's gonna be able to win challenges if you let him get too far into the game, and he's now too far in the game where he can easily win these challenges, especially if this next episode they take out, say, like someone who is good in these challenges, like Cassidy, Owen, or Carla.
yeah. It's tough to say. It's really tough to say. Because like he's been playing such a good game up until this point, and now the idols have a lot more value at this point where it's like I don't think we're gonna get um I think if none of them play their idol next episode, they're insane.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
like it would be funny to see a kind of like a Suri thing happen again at Final Five, but at the same time, it's very unlikely because the knives are coming out for everyone. Everyone's name is being mentioned. Even Gabler's name is being mentioned.
Yeah.
Owen's like, I'm willing to write Gabler's name down. And it's like, stuff's gonna fly. We could see well, it really depends on who wins immunity, but I
Mhm.
can see I see one, at least one being played next time. I can even
Yeah.
see two.
I,
Um,
I I think if we get an idol play, and Cody, Jesse, or Carla do not have the immunity necklace, I think all three idols are just gonna get played.
that is
Um,
a big possibility too.
yeah,
Um,
I think Carla is a very defensive player, so I think if she sees Jesse or Cody play the idol and she knows that she voted for them, I think she'll just instinctively play her idol just
that's
because she
just common
knows.
sense.
Yeah, so she'll just be like, you know what? I'm not getting idol out of this game. I'm just gonna play my idol. Like, who cares? I'm just gonna be safe here. Um, and I think Jesse and Cody are very uh good at being able to tell what's going on with everyone around them. So even if I think there could be a flip that just ends up happening, I think that they're more likely to be able to suss it out, be able to play an idol. And if Carla plays idol, I think whoever doesn't play the idol is like, well, then I guess I'll play my idol because otherwise the votes are just gonna get flipped over onto me.
Yeah, like it doesn't. Don't save your idol at that point. If your target plays the idol, that means their
Yeah.
votes are null and void.
Yeah,
If
and if your closest ally and there's only two of you plays an idol as well,
Yeah, it's
like
like cover your bases because at that point it's like you just have to.
yeah,
Otherwise, you risk going home.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm really curious though, if people out there are wanting to go to the end though with Cody. It does seem like there's a lot of people who are really big fans of Cody out there. I know some of the exit interviews, people are like, I thought I was closer to Cody than Jesse. Like there are
Yeah,
people who really think that. So it's a real testament to Cody's social game of just somehow getting everyone to like him so much that they want to like get to the end with Cody.
I don't know. I feel like because at this point in the game, granted, there's so many big. You have the main three threats. Um, I feel if we're looking at who number four is, could be Owen because like he has the underdog story going for him. Um, but if we're looking at the big three, all of them, I expect all of them to kind of go out. They're all shaped up to be eliminated at this point because they're
Mhm.
big, big players. They're big players that everyone knows.
Yep.
And it's like I feel like it's just it's only a matter of time. I'd say the only one out of those three who's not as I don't want to say a third place, but like we talked about, Jesse is playing it very, very smart.
Mhm.
And I feel like his gameplay is not as I don't want to say flashy, but his gameplay isn't as apparent as Carla or Cody. And so
Mhm.
he kind of slips under the radar. But like these three, in fact, yeah. Um, hold on, let me look. A lot of people, in prediction stuff, were saying that, we would lose Jesse around this point or Carla. I mean,
Mhm.
granted, we didn't know Cody. You had him as number 7 on your draft list. We thought he was going to
Yeah.
go home a lot sooner because he was such a wild card. But now that, like, especially watching this, people were thinking, this 6, 7 through like 5, that's where we lose like fan favorites or like people that could win over the jury. I
Mhm.
feel all three of those people can totally do that. So one of them is going to get to the end because it's mathematically improbable that none of them will. At
Yeah.
least one is.
Yeah, it does have to be just a situation where Gabler Owen and Cassidy have to come together and decide we are going to the final three. We are going to get rid of these other three. And there's nothing that we are going to get broken up to let anything else happen.
Unless all three of them play their idols, then they're just gone.
Yeah. But yeah, and as I just said, I think all three of them are going to play their idol at on like I thought they were going to play their idol this week, but I'm still pretty positive that they're all going to play their idol at the same time, and make it another round. So we're already looking at okay. Well, then if that happens, guaranteed someone has to get to the end there. And now it's just which one do people are more likely to take with you? And I would say yeah, Jesse and Cody are probably closer to there. I feel like Carla. People know a little more that her game, what her game is, so they're more likely to take her out um,
Yeah,
around this like 6 or 5 area. But yeah,
it's tricky. It's tricky. It's very, very tricky. Um, but I agree. I feel like because Carla's name has been brought up out of the three the most.
mm,
She's been on, you know, like even the thing of like, oh, getting rid of Cassidy because like the whole thing about, oh, that's going to wound Carla, just like how getting rid of James wounded Carla. There were so many votes where it was like, let's target Carla. So much so she's like, all right, I'm gonna take out my own person so you don't get that satisfaction. Uh, you know,
yeah,
if you can't get rid of your target, get rid of your target's number one. And I feel like there was a lot of that. And so, like, I'd say it's one of those things because she's been brought up the most. She may be the most likely out of the three to go
yeah.
um, before the other two.
Yeah, I do think she's still gonna make it to the finale. I think they've just given her so much screen time. I think they could have still made her much more of a villain this season. But I think that they wanted her to be very liked because she makes it super far into the game, makes it to the finale. I think they just want her to have like like a more rootable story for the whole thing.
Well, I don't know if you read this article. I saw this on the Facebook group I'm on Facebook with. The Facebook group I'm on Facebook with, the Survivor group I'm on Facebook with, and someone posted an article of like, how they cast seasons and stuff, and they use this season as an example of like, how it's not always cut and dry what people are going to bring out there. They did think Carla was going to play a lot more aggressive game
Mhm.
in the beginning. And when she didn't pick up the Blair advantage and stuff, that surprised everyone.
uh
Like, because they didn't expect that from her specifically, because she did seem like a very aggressive player going in. And a lot of people had that assumption of her.
Mhm.
Um, but like, they were surprised to see how like like how she keeps her cards close to the chest in that regard, except for we found out she told Cassidy about the idol. Or
Mhm.
it was more so like she couldn't cover up her lie and her face
Yeah.
just kind of said it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think people were really expecting that from her. They also didn't expect Cody to be so like so
Smooth
like,
smooth.
exactly.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I
yeah,
saw this as well. Which I understand that there's like a little like, whoa, that's a little surprising, but like we also did see she had a confessional on a day one that was a villainous confessional that was very clear she was going to do what she wanted. Gio and James, who both got eliminated, both said that they thought she was a villain on the season. So, and those are like close people to her. Those
yeah.
aren't like people who hated her. Those are like people who she was aligning with for a period of time.
Well, I mean, I feel I mean, this episode we saw a bit of her villainous side, or like the more
Yeah.
like apparent villainous side, where she was willing to just get rid of Cassidy.
Yeah.
More like, yeah, go. Um,
Yeah, I actually want to talk about that real quick. Do you think that Carla went into Tribal expecting to vote Sammy still because that was kind of the plan. That's what Jesse wanted. That's what I guess for Carla to vote Cassidy instead of Sammy, because that's what Jesse wanted was for her to have kind of ruin that relationship with Cassidy that way. But we actually see that she ends up flipping over onto Sammy still. Do you think that that was because he says he's playing a shot in the dark? She's just like, well, he broke the code. We're all voting for him now.
It's really tough to say. I can see both equally, though I think it really depends on what, because no one, at least from what the edit we saw, eventually Cass finds out. No one told Cass that that Carla was gunning for her.
Mhm.
So, it's really tough to say. In my head, I think it was straightforward, or at least that was my kind of assumption once I saw that was unanimous between, everyone else.
Mhm.
Congrats to Owen too to finally being on the
Finally.
right side.
Yeah,
Uh,
it took him until final seven, but
yeah. Um, but I can see it either way, to be honest. I feel like we may get a not a confessional, but I mean the information might come out on a confessional
yeah.
of like her revealing her strategy going in. Um, because I feel like I can very much see, someone like wanting to change their vote after they was like, I'm gonna play my shot in the dark. I'm like, do you not trust me? And that
Uh,
whole like thing about trust near the end. Um,
Yeah, it seemed like Carla was very like against Sammy, even like, which was is hilarious. She was like, "I've never heard anyone say they're going to play their shot in the dark." It's like, well, you weren't there for Baca's day three with Gabler saying he's going to play his
I'm
shot.
gonna use my shot in the dark, even though I'm immune.
Yeah. I was like, were not there for day three Baca gameplay, Carla. You have no idea who
You
you're
know,
dealing with.
we also got to talk about the shot in the dark because I believe this is the sixth time it's been used.
Yeah,
Statistically speaking, I was expecting it to work because this is like I know that's not exactly how math
yeah.
works. You
Yeah,
know,
well, 1 in 6 is just such a small chance
yeah,
that even if you roll one dice over and over again trying to get a six, it is very hard to guarantee yourself a six.
who
You're
has their who has their little D&D dice pouch right here? I
yeah,
rolled
yeah.
a one.
Yeah, see, it's it's so hard to get that. I know Rob Cesternino said that what he thinks could be a better iteration of this if they brought Shot in the Dark back for season 45 and on.
I just
um
rolled one.
uh yeah, it's basically every time someone uses their Shot in the Dark, it would go down to being from a 1 in 6 chance to 1 in 5 chance. So every time it gets used, but then once it gets used correctly, it like resets. So then it would go
That's
back to
pretty
being
cool.
1 6. So that way it's almost like don't use it right away, but like at some point you'll hit kind of like that sweet spot of just like, wait a second, I maybe now have like a 1 in 3 chance. Like,
Yeah.
may as well do it.
No, I mean like it is something where, and by the way, when I said, oh, it was going to happen this time because it's like the sixth time
Mhm.
that it's been used, just in general, since we've seen it,
Yeah,
um, how the math kind of works there, it doesn't like add on. It's just like, each time it's a 1 in 6 shot. It's
yeah,
still the same odds each time, but
yeah.
yeah. Ouch. Or gotta scratched myself and opened a scab. TMI. But I said ouch, so I had to explain it.
Yeah, I liked how you started by like trying to like tone it down a little bit, but then you ended up actually going to like even worse. You're like, I don't want to say that I cut myself. I scratched a scab. That's now.
Well, I mean, like, it's so for those who don't know, little personal information about me. During the holiday season, starting in like November, late October, I hang up Christmas lights. And it is a job that when you're on roofs or on trees, you're going to get, cuts on yourself. And I
Mhm.
have like a little you know how when you're this no, I'm not. It looks like a one of those like little check mark seagulls you draw when you're a kid because it's like, oh, it's a bird.
Mhm.
If you do the little like that kind of thing.
Uh,
It kind of looks like that. Anyway, we're off topic.
yeah, look at
Um,
that.
so there is what were we talking about before that?
That is a good question. I got lost in cuts talk.
A talk.
Shot
All right, we're shot in the dark.
in the dark,
So,
yes.
and we were talking about how the odds don't reset each time, and you brought up Rob's idea for it because
Mhm.
I feel that makes sense. And then also it's like another layer of gameplay.
Yeah,
But at the same time, it's tough because you don't want to rely on the shot in the dark. You
yeah,
know, it and let's say, yeah, they said, oh, seven's the last time you can play it. And let's say it got down to like two or three, then multiple people will play it, but then there's not enough to go around, if that
yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, I'd say I'd be interested in at least seeing it to be done if 44 doesn't have any hits. I think if 44 doesn't have any hits, I think you just don't bring back the shot in the dark, although unless you tweak it like this. I think
Yeah.
either you have to make a big adjustment to how it works, otherwise it's an unnecessary thing that like like if I showed my mom the Survivor this episode, she would have no idea what the shot in the dark was. I suddenly Sam would be like, "I'm playing my shot in the dark." She'd be
Yeah.
like, "What?" It's already a advantage that is so like you have to know that this is even in Survivor
Yeah.
for like the casual audience that and like the casual audience is also some is probably the most important people that you actually catch in Survivor
Yeah.
because those are most of the people like the hardcore fans. We're the ones that are they're watching everything. We like to analyze it. We're the ones on the podcast that go on to all these stuff, but
Yeah.
we are a minority of the people who are actually watching Survivor.
Yeah. And
So
then there's
it's
also
yeah.
people like that just discover Survivor. Like the very first season I watched was Marquesas. And
Mhm.
it wasn't like fully or anything. I was just like a kid. And I remember it was when it was the loved one challenge and stuff. And I remember seeing that episode and stuff. I was like, ooh, that was cool. And I remember like a couple years later seeing Panama, like a bunch of episodes of Panama were playing out. And then I was like seeing that and it's like, oh, this is entertaining. Granted, this
Mhm.
game was much simpler back then.
Yeah.
But what really got me into Survivor was watching Tocantins. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. And I got into it at like final six. Like
Yeah.
it was on. I was like, I want to, see what Survivor's like. You kind of want to, if you're able to hook someone in midway through the season or near the end, you know, you can still get a fan out of that if they're just channel surfing or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
yeah,
think you touched on a really interesting point is that the fact that it was so simple back in the day meant anyone could watch Survivor at any point in the season and be able to understand the episode that they have watched. We are at
yeah.
a point where that is no longer the case.
Well,
The game has become advantage ridden. It has become way too more crazy and complex, or it isn't just a very simple like here's a bunch of people. We are here surviving on this island. We are going to do our best to make sure that, our tribe and cohesiveness is good. Like that's all that matters. Like
yeah,
now we are in a much more situation of just like, I don't care about these people who can do
it's about the
survival.
gameplay.
Yeah, it's about the gameplay. It's about finding advantages. It's about backstabbing people, even though that makes no sense for my game.
And I think that's just how the evolution of the game just went because like, way back when Richard Hatch, played the way he played, it's like, it's what he was the only one really out there that was go looking beyond what the survivor like thing was, where it was just, oh, these people surviving and they have to vote people out. It's like, no, this is a game. I could win $1 million. And in early Survivor, we didn't see too much of that from a majority of the cast. Probably why we haven't seen so many season one characters or contestants return after that,
Mhm.
besides All Stars and like after All Stars, very, very few people from season one have returned.
Yeah, you
Um,
got like Jervis and Blood vs. Water and Kelly Wigglesworth from
yeah.
Second Chance. And
Other than
that's
that, not really much people from Borneo.
yeah.
Some of them don't even have the desire to. It's like, oh, it wasn't what they were thinking it was going to be. And the game has, or the thing has shifted so much away from that because, like, yeah, I feel like it would have gotten repetitive at that point, where it's just about survival. What
Uh,
really makes Survivor interesting to watch, and what like the hardcore fans are really into is the gameplay mechanic. What makes Big Brother or The Challenge or Amazing Race or Total Drama really interesting to watch is like the gameplay and stuff like that, and seeing how they like navigate that. Like that's what draws people in is like the strategy. It's kind of like spectating, an
mhm,
esport or a regular sport.
mhm.
It's like we're watching these people play a game and it's fun and it's interesting.
Yeah,
So it's like, that's the big draw. It's a competition, and therefore we watch it for the competition now. Now, granted, there are some old school loyalists who is like, no, we want it like very, very simple. And we get tastes of that.
yeah,
But it's like because the show had to evolve this way to keep us entertained, to make it a in its own right, a sport.
yeah.
Um, it had to evolve. Now they went crazy with 41 with the challenges. This is a lot more 43 is a lot more cohesive with everything that's going on.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm definitely curious if if we ever end up maybe getting like a back to basic season though, like a season where they do say like let's let no one know that we're going out there and not going to put advantages. And so you just have all these people freaking out the entire season. Even though there's nothing actual, there's no real threat out there. It's just the paranoia of years of training them that advantages are going to ruin your game.
That's
They're out there.
and to dedicate an entire season to that, I understand why that would be interesting, and I would be
Mhm.
interested to see it. But to dedicate a whole season to it, you
Yeah.
know, because that's like actual production. That's an investment on their end because
Yeah.
like Survivor, wasn't as popular as it was back in the day and
Yeah.
something like that. Like every time I hear it gets renewed, I'm like, yay, because we're at this point where, people outside of the reality TV show, game show competitions, kind of, I do feel like it is a community. Even if
Mhm.
like we have our Survivor fans, we have our Amazing Race and Big Brother, and there's some people that like intermingle between that. Like all those like competition reality shows, in a sense, are a community. Um, and so like, we kind of we're a loyal fan base. However, there are, like you said, casual viewers. And so like some of the casual viewers might really like the gameplay and strategy and the competition of it. So like maybe the fact that there is no advantage might spoil it for them where it's like, oh, well, there's nothing really going on here. And then they
Yeah.
might dip.
Yeah, maybe. I think we'd see the exact opposite. I think that you could show that season to anyone and say this is how Modern Survivor makes the episode, but this is just a season that anyone can follow. Like everything is going to be very clear They're going to be able to exactly be able to tell you why people are going home. Because right now, because of advantages, you like there are so many different like reasons for why people go home to the point where a lot of times people go home and you're like, that doesn't why is that person out now? Like that doesn't make sense. But it's like, well, actually they knew about this one advantage that someone had that they didn't want to let out. And it's like, okay, well, that's not really like it's not really worth a go home because they because they got told by one person of an advantage. Like that's just not it's not a satisfying conclusion to that. Like anyone would just be like, that's dumb. I just watched a terrible episode. Because in their opinion, the conclusion of the episode is terrible. It just doesn't make any sense. Like you want to follow a story, and
Yeah.
if the story doesn't make sense, if you are getting told gibberish, it's hard to really be like that's a good story. Um, so I do think if we just streamline the season, I really do think that we could get a lot more casual viewers in because it'd just be so much more accessible. Like right now, it's so hard to get a new person to watch a modern season. You have to say, okay, don't watch the season yet. Go back and watch these seasons first.
Yeah.
Learn what Survivor is, and then watch the new stuff.
It is a little it is a little tricky unless you get them at the very, very top of it and explain everything.
Yeah.
Um, I would say now, do you think on the same vein of a back to basics season that it would be either A, returnees or B, a new cast? Because honestly, if I got cast on Survivor and I got a back to basics thing, I'd feel kind of cheated a little.
Mhm.
I would be like, so there's no advantages, anything. Like I would be like, come on, my season, there's none of this stuff. I'd be like,
Mhm.
what the
Yeah, I think you got to do it on a new person season. To be honest, I think on and I know that that's like the idea is like, oh, I wanted to find an idol and stuff like that's obviously like a bucket list item for a lot of people. But there is something to know that you are on. Just it's going to be a very unique season. That all the seasons around you are not going to be like it. You're really going to be tried on what makes a great survivor player, which is
yeah.
social awareness, social capital. Like you're going to the more roots, like you really would know who the best player on that season would be if they did something like that.
I think the argument can also be made because you make a lot of great points there,
Hmm.
but to like build upon it to show you for the returnees, because
Hmm.
we have a lot of like competitors who have won where they have made, I don't want to say their win was dependent on it, but it saved their butt a few times, or it gave them opportunity to boost their final tribal argument.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to bring new school players who have been established to be like really, really strong, um and then throw them into an old school season, because then it'd be
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, it's not, it's a way they're not used to. It's because we've seen the reverse where at Winners at War we had like 8 or 9 people who are more accustomed to old school Survivor or even mid school,
Hmm.
but and then like they all did terribly. Almost every single one of them went out pre-merge.
Hmm.
um Actually, all of them kind of did. And then Tyson came back, but he's kind of in that middle school range.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's one of those things where, all right, seeing the reverse of that happen with new school players, like,
Yeah. Yeah, it could be interesting also if this was the old school versus new school kind of season as well, where we do typically see the old school players struggle even on other seasons like Second Chance and stuff. Like it's hard for some of the new school or old school players to play the new school game, flip it on its head, be like, okay, well, now we're doing an old school season, old school versus new school, back to the basics. New school, you're gonna have to adapt this time.
that would be interesting because then we get to see we do get some old school contestants and we can see them shine a little bit. Um, Not saying that old school's contestants can't shine in modern Survivor. They can,
Mhm.
but it's a lot harder because the new meta, and it's kind of like what I talked about right in the beginning with this one, challenge, the Rising Tide challenge.
Mhm.
It's like because like things are a lot harder and been more established throughout the whole thing of Survivor, the contestants playing now are kind of like used to it, are playing a much higher level of gameplay than they were back in um, even Micronesia.
Mhm.
Um, or which was like, I'd say like a really big turning point for, at the time was New School Survivor.
Yeah. Yeah, nice. So yeah, we've gone on to now this whole conversation about should we go back to basics. I think it's something that could easily be explored. It would take a little more thought than just being like, this is now season 44, season 43, let's just go. Like, there's a little more thought you got to go into it, but I think it really could be beneficial for the growth of Survivor as well, to get back to a bigger audience, because every year we lose more people. There are less people watching Survivor,
No, that's fair.
and that's
Um,
just it's an unfortunate truth. Clearly something's not going right with modern Survivor if people are dropping off.
that is that is a point. I think also it's a thing of like, I wouldn't say fatigue, but I mean like Survivor back when it came on was one of the most watched shows back in its day.
Yeah,
And that's mostly because of like, oh, it was kind of like new and stuff like that. And I mean, with any kind of show, I wouldn't say it loses steam, but if it's been
yeah,
on for a while, I would say that casual audience would move on to something else. We also live in the day and age of, I don't want to say where user created content is very prominent and a lot of like younger generation are very into it as well, like
mhm,
the TikTok generation and stuff.
yeah,
Like I remember even like in 2014, 2015, watching videos where people would be like, oh yeah, um my kids don't watch like shows or anything, they watch like YouTubers and stuff like that,
yeah.
where it's its own kind of like beast that a lot of people are going behind. And even when it comes to like shows in general, I because like obviously we do like the like entertainment on our phone where it's like, oh yeah, we can do that. But we also do like stories at the end of the day. We're naturally storytellers.
Mhm.
And so that audience is always going to be there, but it's tough because like they also have to keep in mind the audience is shrinking a little bit just because some people aren't into watching TV shows or movies as much as they were, I'll even say 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, good point there. I'm gonna have us move on just because I know that it's
Yes.
you got to get going here pretty soon here. And I want to quickly do confessional counts. I'll do a quick little rundown of confessionals. Um, Cody once again has taken the crown for confessional accounts. He is back in the lead with 46 confessionals to Jesse's 45. So the
Ooh,
fact that Jesse only did one confessional gave Cody the chance to get right back up
bump up.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Carla is in third with 37. Sammy would have been in fourth if he stuck around. He was at 35 at the end of it. He got seven confessionals this last episode, so big one there. And then Cassie's the lowest still with 26. She still has less confessionals than Ellie.
Wow. I mean, it's something where with Cassidy, I don't like hate her as a player or anything.
Yeah,
It's
of
just like
course.
you have this big three, and then you have someone like Gabler who's kind of a wild card, and then
Yeah.
Owen where I think he put it best this episode, like his past performance, and it's not even like his fault in a sense, it's just he wasn't told to vote the right way,
Yeah.
where it's just gotten comical to like how out of the loop he is, which kind of it paints an underdog story, but I don't think we're going to get another underdog win this
Yeah.
season.
Yeah, I think his only chance of winning would be if he is with Gabler and Cassidy. And even then, I think he has like a 30% chance of winning. Like I actually think I wouldn't be surprised if Gabler uh spins a crazy tail in final tribal council and ends up winning.
You know, anything is possible.
Yeah, but
I'm not dissing that idea at all because
yeah,
you never really count anyone out. I
yeah,
mean, you could easily count out Gabler. We all discounted Gabler in the
yeah,
beginning. But I mean, if it's coming down to it, maybe he can do a underdog story. He is very much going along
yeah,
like he is a goat, but you know, sometimes like I don't know. It's possible. I'm not counting it out. I mean, we all thought Cody prior to the season, he was a wild card. For him to make
yeah,
it this far, like you never know.
yeah,
And you never know what kind of jury is there. I think we do live in an age where the jury isn't as bitter as it has been in, let's say, older school or mid school Survivor,
mhm,
but you never know. You never
yeah.
know.
Yeah. One more thing before we move on to MVPs and LVPs, going back over to Cassidy. The reason she's probably just getting less screen time is also look at who she's up against. There's the big three who are
Yeah,
not only great players but great characters. Like they give a lot of great entertainment value to the season. And then you got Gabler, who is crazy, and honestly, we want to keep hearing whatever comes out of his mouth. So they're going to
yeah,
keep giving us Gabler. And then Owen is your typical like Survivor super fan who clearly production loves. Like they do like Owen a lot, so they're giving
yeah,
him the screen time because they probably want him to return again. Like I'm guessing that they want him to feel like he was really important to the season, so they're
yeah.
going to keep giving us a lot of Owen as well.
I can see that.
Which
Yeah.
means that then it's like, well, someone's got to kind of like not get all
there's only
this.
so there's only so much screen time they can give. And when
Yeah,
people are doing more interesting stuff, that's just how the cookie crumbles. I mean,
yeah,
he does have moments on there, but they're not as like big as everyone else's.
yeah.
But yeah,
Exactly. Okay, let's move on now to MVPs and LVPs to end out the episodes. Who is your MVP?
I am going to give it to Cody, mostly because like just his position in the game, calling it right, and then
Mm,
also finding it in the first place where no one else could. Um, it kind of like what we were talking about Jesse. I think last episode where I don't know how much in the long term it's going to get him,
mhm.
but as of now, he has a really good shot at least making it to Final Four.
Yeah, he's probably going in the fire, I'm imagining.
Yeah,
Unless say you can win immunity at Final Four, but he's definitely getting himself into situations where he's at least going to be able to have a chance to get himself to the ends.
yeah,
So yeah, I also choose Cody. I think this was a good episode. I think he's had a quieter last like 3 or 4 episodes. Like he's been there, but he hasn't really done anything crazy. He's really been Jesse's like right hand man kind of like situation, the almost the sidekick to Jesse for a few episodes now. But I think this episode was able to kind of like catapult him back and be like, remember when Cody was having a bunch of confessionals on an episode? Yeah,
yeah,
we can still do that.
yeah. No, I think the winner stock for him is high, but I think it is a big
Mhm.
target on him, and
Yeah.
that duo is pretty
Yeah,
powerful.
I'm still more likely to pick Jesse over Cody,
Same,
and
same.
that's as I said, like it felt like Cody had become the sidekick for so long that it feels like that's kind of what we're being told is Jesse's the strategist. He's the one in control really of the two of them, and
Yeah,
Cody is more of the figurehead.
exactly.
Mhm.
Um, As for LVP, there isn't anyone that stands out like, oh, that was a bad move.
Yeah.
So I might just have to give it to Sammy.
Yeah, I will say we didn't talk about it, but at the beginning of the episode, he has a very terrible opening
Why?
to the episode. Yeah, he lies, gets caught, and then has to go over and be like, "Yeah, I lied."
Yeah, so I'd say with a mixture of that, dropping out first in the challenge,
A second.
or second, early in the challenge.
Yeah, but, you know,
And
he beat
then,
Gabler. Like that's not for this kind of challenge, that's not impressive.
yeah. And then the whole thing with the shot in the dark thing and being open about it. I'm
Yeah.
like, inevitably he would have chosen wrong anyway. But in the sense, it doesn't look good, even if there was an inkling of like maybe they were all leaning towards Cass.
Yeah.
But
Well, yeah. I think
yeah,
if he survived this, I think he was actually in a very he could have easily slithered and Sammy the snaked his way to
yeah,
honestly the end. Like I think that he very could have easily could have found himself there. But this was definitely the most likely time to take out Sammy before that kind of happened. So
I did call it. I did call it. It's not the way I thought it was going to happen. I thought an idol was going to be played this episode, and then
yeah.
Sammy was just the safe bet to take out.
Yeah.
But he did.
You were
But I
right in
did
your
see
boot list.
so far, so
Yeah.
far.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah. So yeah, I kind of have to give it to Sammy just because I wouldn't say just with the little bad gameplay that he did have, plus the fact that no one else did anything really that bad either. Like it was pretty straightforward for a lot of people where they were either neutral or it was good gameplay.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to give it to Sammy too, but I will say he is the most entertaining teenager we have had on Survivor. He needs to return to the game, but he needs to return when he is 22.
I can see that.
That
I
would
think
be a great story, is how he makes his return to Survivor now as the actual age that he lied about.
that would be cool. I mean, around that time, we can go on a little tangent or a little discussion about it, but because we even mentioned a returnee season, it's kind of like when will we see, because eventually they will do a returnee season,
Mhm.
but it's only a matter of like when, because I think,
Yeah.
do we see it at 45 or 46? It's a possibility,
I think we're
but
getting
it's
at
like,
46.
yeah, I
That
feel
that's
like,
that's my just because on their website they're saying apply to season 45 and future seasons. I'm guessing we're going to get
a
a 40,
returnee.
yeah, maybe a fans versus favorites kind of situation where they bring like half of the is like the new season kind of like favorites from the first 5 seasons,
Yeah,
and then the other half is completely new players.
yeah. I was kind of hoping 46 would not be a returnee because if I get cast in 45, I miss out on a wedding. Uh,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
my
well,
wedding, but someone else's. But we'll see.
yeah, yeah. I imagine 45 also though. If you're on it, maybe if you do good enough, you can also be on 46. You know, they've done that before.
We'll see. This is assuming that I even get. I have not heard anything from them.
Yeah,
I also did Big Brother too, so like, who knows? I might
who
not ever
knows?
be on Survivor. I just become a Big Brother guy.
Yeah,
Um,
this becomes a Big Brother podcast because we got to make the transition.
Well, it's not entirely like a friend of mine who he was a supervisor at Halloween Horror Nights. He runs like Survivor stuff with James from Amazing Race slash The Challenge USA
Mhm.
because they're really good friends, and so like they focus on some Survivor stuff. So you never know. Like, I could, this is all fictitious. So who knows? Who knows? Who you could be on Survivor and
Yeah,
like maybe you've had the Zoom calls.
yeah. Who knows? It's all mystery.
Yeah. All right. So we've pretty much covered a lot of ground here. Not just about the episode, but like, Survivor as a whole and where it may be going in future seasons.
Mhm.
I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah, exactly. That's gonna wrap it up here for this episode. We'll see you in the next one.
Peace.